Last night in the Championship really shook things up, especially around the bottom half of the Championship, and that's going to be the focus of today's video. Now, going into tonight's matches, this is how the Championship table currently shapes up. We've got the bottom three being made up of Portsmouth, QPR and Coventry, and those three sides in particular are going to be the focus of today's video. Because I have to admit, for at least two of those sides, I did not expect them to be anywhere near a relegation battle this season. Obviously, there's still a long way to go between now and the end of the campaign, but the early signs regarding those three in the relegation zone haven't been great. Looking at my Championship predictions from before a ball was kicked, I had Coventry predicted to finish in 4th, QPR in 14th and Portsmouth in 19th, so none of the clubs that are currently occupying a spot in the bottom three I had to go down at the start of the season. But since that point, something has clearly gone wrong, and in today's video we're going to be having a closer look at each of them. We'll start the video out by talking about Portsmouth, who were well beaten by Cardiff in midweek. We'll actually touch on Cardiff first of all, because they were obviously a side who have been occupying a spot in the bottom three until recently, but have really changed their fortunes around since dismissing Errol Bullock. To put into context just how good Cardiff have been since they got rid of Bullock, this is the league table since he left the club. Only Leeds have picked up more points than Cardiff have in these last 5 matches, where Cardiff are currently averaging 2 points per game in the post-Errol Bullock era, which I suppose shows the promise of that side and how much they were actually underperforming in these opening matches of the season. But switching the focus back to Portsmouth, who do currently sit bottom of the Championship table, midweek was a little bit worrying for me. It was only 2-0 to Cardiff in the end, but as the momentum bar shows here, as some of the underlying statistics show here as well, this could have been a lot worse. Cardiff looked really comfortable in this match, were bossing it for the vast majority, had an XG of 2.72 compared to Portsmouth, who only had one of 0.68. Cardiff created 5 big chances, had 24 shots in total compared to Pompey, who only had 8. Cardiff found themselves 2 goals up after 13 minutes, and had they gone for the kill, it felt like it maybe could have been a repeat of that game against Stoke where Portsmouth shipped 6 goals. It speaks volumes when Portsmouth's man of the match in this one was Jordan Archer, in between the 6 for them. In terms of the underlying data for Pompey so far this season, it doesn't make for great reading. They're currently averaging 0.73 points per game, which if they were to continue to average between now and the end of the season, they'd only finish the campaign with 33 points, which would almost certainly result in relegation. The major worry for this team at the moment is how many goals they're conceding. 23 conceded in their opening 11 matches. Alright, 6 of them did come in one game, in that quite freakish result against Stoke City, but it still paints a picture. And then even the underlying data does back this up with Portsmouth so far this season as well. They've conceded a higher XG than any other Championship side so far this season. They've also faced more shots than any Championship side this season, and have faced more shots on target than any Championship side this season as well. Now, some of Portsmouth's stats will be skewed because of that really tough start to the season they had, where they played all of the big boys pretty much in their opening 7 or so matches. But even of late, where they've had these more quote-unquote winnable games against the likes of Stoke, Oxford, QPR and now Cardiff, they've still been conceding a lot of chances. After what has been a really slow start to the season, it perhaps does shine a bit of a light on their summer recruitment, which to a lot of Pompey fans right now is probably looking quite a bit underbaked, especially when you compare to the likes of Derby and Oxford, who in comparison have started this season really well. Now, the saving grace for Portsmouth is that long term their fixture list doesn't actually look too bad, and even going into the new year, I think there's so many opportunities within this run here to pick up points. The next 4 games, for example, are all against sides currently in the bottom half of the table, but it's performances like that in midweek which do concern me a little bit going forward. Before a ball had been kicked, like I said, I had them as the best performing of the 3 newly promoted clubs coming up from League One, but what we've seen on evidence so far from all 3 sides doesn't look like that'll be the case. But Pompey fans, want to get your verdict on not just last night, but the season as a whole in the comments down below. What needs to change in order for you to stop moving up the league table? Let me know. And then the other 2 teams that I really wanted to touch on for today's video, coincidentally both played each other last night. It was QPR against Coventry. It ended as a 1-1 draw. Pretty unhelpful results in the grand scheme of things for both clubs. I'd go ahead and say it was a massive opportunity for either of them to have put down a bit of a statement last night. It didn't happen in the end, obviously. Haji Wright gave Coventry the lead after just 4 minutes. QPR eventually managed to get themselves back into the game. But QPR and Cov fans, I'd be interested to get your take on this one in the comments down below. Speaking about Coventry first of all, because they did take the lead in this game, I think Mark Robins is a bit of a lost manager right now in terms of what he's trying to do. He's throwing quite a bit at the wall right now and nothing is particularly sticking. A major flaw that I think a lot of people have with Coventry right now is probably the makeup of their midfield. Obviously, Ben Sheaf missed a chunk of the season through injury. He's since returned. And while Coventry were losing games at the start of the season, a lot of people had said, just wait until Sheaf gets back into this team, then all those problems will be ironed out. And it's not quite happened like that. While he is still a top performer, the whole makeup of that midfield just isn't right at the moment. They're losing too many battles in there. Now, I can obviously speak on this as a Preston fan. I saw Coventry in the flesh last weekend and really didn't think they were up to much in that game, to be honest with you. I was absolutely staggered how easily their midfield was being able to be bypassed by Preston's midfield. You know, we created an XG of over 2 goals in that game, which, other than our game against Watford, is the highest XG we've created against any side so far this season. We found it really easy to get in front of goal, basically. A large portion of that was Coventry losing the midfield battle. Now, player for player, I think all three of these, Radoni, Sheaf and Eccles, all have their plus points, but whether or not they complement each other, at the moment, I'm not sure. Obviously, speaking about Robins and what he's been trying to do so far this season, Coventry started the season out predominantly playing a 4-2-3-1. After that, didn't really work out. For one game, they switched to a 4-3-3, but then since that point, we've sort of seen them alternating between a 3-5-2 and a 5-3-2 in an attempt to become a little bit more solid at the back and try to get things moving up the pitch as well. But so far, that's not really happened. Results for Coventry recently, as we can see here, have still been really spotty. And looking at their upcoming fixtures, this is not the sort of run I'd want to have when you are in a rut right now. Their next games they've got against the likes of Luton, Middlesbrough, Derby, Sunderland, Sheffield United and Burnley. I mean, right now, there's no easy games in those, are there? From a QPR perspective right now, it's been equally as disappointing, having only won one of their opening 11 matches this season. There were quite a few positive vibes around QPR coming into this season on the back of how well they'd finished last season under Martí Cifuentes, but none of that positivity has really carried through, and quite a few red flags are starting to pop up with them. Now, last season, under Martí Cifuentes, QPR were one of the best defensive sides in the league. Since Cifuentes came in until the end of last season, QPR conceded 32 goals, and in that same time period, only Leeds conceded less than they did in the Championship. They were built upon defensive foundations, making themselves really tough to beat, and at times they'd absolutely kill you on the counter-attack. There was a perfect example of that of when QPR came to Preston last season. They just executed that game plan magnificently. For whatever reason, they seem to have come away from that this season. Obviously, Clark Salter missing a few matches hasn't helped things. Obviously, on paper, you'd probably say he's their best defender. He was back in the frame for this one against Coventry. But the overriding picture for QPR so far this season is that they are conceding too many goals. Only Portsmouth have conceded more goals than QPR have up until this point of the season, which is such a far cry from that resolute side that they were for pretty much all of last season under Cifuentes. Picking up points regularly at Loftus Road is becoming a bit of a problem for QPR as well, even dating back to pre-Cifuentes. That had been a bit of a problem for QPR, if I remember rightly. And when you can't consistently pick up points in your home matches and win those winnable games at Loftus Road, you leave yourselves in a really sticky situation. Once again, for QPR and their immediate fixture list coming out of this Coventry game, I don't think it's ideal. Their next 4 games in particular, where they play the likes of Burnley, Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Leeds United, that's not the sort of run you want to be looking at when you're currently in the bottom 3. Perhaps reason for optimism for both of these sides, though, is that when you do look into the underlying numbers, neither of them have been statistically a bottom 3 club so far this season. Certainly not in terms of a lot of the more quote-unquote important stats. So if we look at the XG metrics so far this season, Coventry have actually been a top half side so far this season. In terms of the chances they've created, they've just been pretty wasteful. And QPR, while not a top half side, haven't been a bottom 3 team either. And in terms of XG conceded, it's quite a similar story as well. Coventry are a top 10 side in the league so far this season in terms of limiting the opposition to fairly few chances, and QPR are a mid-table sort of team for that right now. But I think there's only so much you can read into those sort of statistics, and when you actually look at the league table as it is right now, you look at the performances in the flesh as well, especially over a full 90 minutes, and there are clearly problems that are stacking up with both of these clubs right now. I do still think that, I mean, especially in the case of Mark Robbins, but even with Cifuentes, they've both got enough credit in the bank where they do deserve adequate time to turn this situation around. But I mean, we've got more games in the Championship going on tonight. Plymouth and Millwall play each other, so at least one of those clubs will be picking up points, and suddenly these three could start to become a little bit cut adrift at the bottom of the table. Listen, it's still very early days into this Championship campaign, but Coventry and QPR fans, what needs to change in the immediate future for you to see an upturn in form, and what was your overall assessment of last night's performance as well? But there you have it, guys. That will wrap it up for today's video. Just wanted to do a little bit of a focus on the three sides currently making up the relegation zone in the Championship. Obviously, we've got more games to look forward to tonight in the league as well. My weekend predictions will be out on the channel tomorrow, so make sure to go ahead and stay tuned for that, where we will be discussing each of the midweek games in a little bit more detail as well. As always though, if you did go on to enjoy, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you are new around here as well. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.